have a new guest coming from a different state, one of our neighboring states, PA. Thanks for joining us today, Crystal.
Yes, thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well, blessed and highly favored.
Yes, thank you.
And so I appreciate you for joining us today. For people who might not know about you, I know you're a big hit already, but for people who might not know about you, please give them your rundown, who you are, why you do what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Crystal. I am located here in Philly. I do a lot of work in the criminal, I don't want to say justice system, but the criminal legal system here. I had a prison van service for 10 years and had to shut that down due to COVID. And I was reuniting family members with their incarcerated loved ones. And then I also was just taking that same audience and just teaching them on how to get their medical marijuana card. And that was the motivation of how I got into the cannabis industry. I just started noticing that a lot of men and women that's in the inner cities, they weren't aware that here in a medicinal state, their right of getting their medical marijuana card. So I started, hosting different like pop-up events where, I would have, doctors come out and then, community members come out where they, register to get their medical marijuana card.
Okay.
So I was doing that for about like 2, 3 years, just as I, just figure out, where I needed to belong within the cannabis industry. And then doing
Okay.
that, it led me to doing Free My Weed Man, which is a social impact campaign.
Yes, yes. Okay. And did you also mention with the stay lifted, or did you talk about that as well?
So Stay Lifted is a safe haven for women, where there's a lot of women, in the community. We're dealing with a lot, especially here in Philly, where we're burying our children. Women, we are the ones that's holding the house down. When our loved ones are sent to prison, but often we're like left out of that whole narrative of when we discuss like criminal justice reform and things like that. So what Stay Lifted was, it really started off as me just saying affirmations to myself. I would,
Okay.
just tell myself, like, girl, stay lifted. Like, come on, get up, stay lifted, after shutting down my prison van service and really uncertain of the direction that I was going to go in. But just knowing me, I love to build community. So as I was, reciting these, like doing these wake and bakes and, reciting these affirmations, other women was like, oh, sis, like I smoke too. I'm a social worker and I smoke. And really just working through that whole stigma, and just, letting people know, like, listen, it's okay for you to be a mom and to consume cannabis. It's okay for you to be a social worker. As many people, hiding their cannabis usage.
It's
And
okay to be a council member.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So, and and just I was providing that safe haven for events.
yeah.
So it was a safe haven for women to come and just consume and just be in like a judgment free, zone while they're really consuming, their medicinal. And also, just helping them get their medical marijuana card and, just allowing them to, go to the dispensaries to get the right and the proper, cannabis. So that's what Stay Lifted was. It really is me
Sure.
just having a safe haven, just for women, just so we can like embrace this whole cannabis lifestyle without, feeling like we're being judged or anything.
Well, you are doing some great work. Of course, I'm seeing it from afar on, social media, but, just hearing about some of this work is definitely, truly inspiring, and of course, learning about your story. And, one of the things that, I want to uplift and talk about is, I said that you could be, a councilman. And, I'm very proudly, a patient and an advocate. And, some people to the extent call me the cannabis councilman. So, that's why I definitely proudly wear the moniker. But the thought is like a lot of times when you're with me, it's not just about, the recreational or just having fun therapeutic. It's about, for one, educating people on the medicinal properties and benefits. And as I tell people, you can get something from this plant, whether it be the euphoria that you're looking for, or the cousin plant, hemp, right? So a lot of times I love educating people on hemp, because sometimes hemp would then open their mind up to medicinal cannabis. right? So I
Right.
definitely love that you uplifted that. But one of the two questions I wanted to ask you was, when did Philly go medical? And since you started all the work in the community, how many people would you have estimated you've helped register?
Yeah, Philly went medical. I'm not sure the exact date. I believe it was like 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And how I found out was I was in therapy, honestly, went to therapy and really was just trying to figure out, like, I was just feeling so burnt out, at the shutting down my prison van service. And my therapist really was like, you can go get your medical marijuana card. Like, I was like fresh new. Like, I didn't even know, that Philly was actually medical. So I would say since I got my medical marijuana card and since I started Stay Lifted, I helped over about like 450 people, get their medical marijuana
Ooh,
cards, because
wow.
there was something where you couldn't really come to my events unless you had a card because technically, I was doing like patient, parties type thing. And it's
Sure,
like
sure.
if our parties was to ever get raided or anything like that, I would need for us to be protected and, for us to at least say like, hey, we're a patient first and we're not just in here, consuming. So that was one of my models. It was like you really
Nice.
couldn't even get your ticket unless you were actually getting your medical marijuana card from me first. So my funnel that I actually set up with Stay Lifted was I, was allowing people to download my ebook for free. And really it just had like doctors' information that I had personal relationship with, that I know that, that they know like what we're going through. They know that we're going through PTSD,
Sure.
anxiety, so they're not looking for you to go to them with this whole lengthy like medical records. It was like, okay, we understand, what you're going through. And they were approving people. So, and I would have the doctors at my event. So even if you wanted to come to my event and you weren't, you didn't have your card, it was a doctor that was there or somebody from their doctor office that was actually registering people. And the last time I checked, it had to be like 460 people that I just had track of.
Hey, so you got to let me know when you hit 500, so I can make sure to highlight that, and that seems like a great milestone. But no, no, I mean you're doing great work,
Yeah, I
definitely.
mean, I haven't did any events because I've been doing like a lot of like just community events as far as like just organizing, as far as like with expungement. So I'm back in the community, but not from the standpoint where I was just having like these what I was calling them pop-up parties. So I'm not having
Okay.
these pop-up parties anymore. Um, I'm more so moving more in towards like the expungement side of things. And our next expungement is August the 27th. And then we're going to be partnering with another organization that's going to be helping people get their medical marijuana card. So that number is going to continue.
Awesome, awesome, and I do love that you're helping people, get their card. I do a lot of free legal clinics and expungement clinics, here in my area in Prince George's County, and in more specifically Laurel, because the thought is like help people get freedom on paper, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, and as I tell a lot of people, right? You brought up a few different things I wanted to hit on. Was you brought up that you can seek something in cannabis for whatever needs it might be, right? So some people it might be psychological, some people it might be physiological, some people it might be actually like physical ailments or injuries, right? And the thought is like sometimes people just aren't educated and aware, you know, of the benefits and these holistic benefits, right? Like I know many seniors who use several different opioids, you know,
Mhm.
controlled substances, right? They use several different opioids, and then I introduce them to CBD or a THC salve, or their daughter tells them about it, or something like that. They just they come to it and they find out, and they're like, wow, I didn't have to take that pill today, or this made me feel so much better, or why did my
Right.
doctor tell me about this? You know what I mean? Like, so I'm so glad that you mentioned, it's not only for the physical ailments, but also for the mental ailments and psychological ailments. And I'm one who's also exploring the benefits of psilocybin. I think that
Hmm.
psilocybin, very similarly to the cannabis plant, can really help with depression, anxiety, and then definitely creativity, because we know that a lot of people use that to open that creative receptors, right? So especially with the
Right.
THCA. So yes,
Right. I mean, I just actually came back in from, I was out in the community just passing out flyers. And, as I'm, passing out the flyers to the community members and just letting them know, like, hey, we have an upcoming expungement. And then, like, that second part, when I'll be like, oh, and then we'll have, somebody there to help you get your medical marijuana card. And half of the people's like, oh, I don't smoke, oh, I don't do that. Like they just shamed it just off the rip. So then my follow-up question was, what do you take when you have pain? Like, oh, I take a Tylenol, or I take, or I go to the doctors and I get this pain medicine. But I really think that it's really just us educating the community, across the board. And then my goal with Free My Weed Man, which is a social impact campaign, my vision for Free My Weed Man is for us to use that as a tool, like the DARE program. You know how the DARE program where it was in our schools and just telling us, I don't know if it was down where you were, but I know here in Philly, our DARE program was in our schools, like telling us,
sure,
don't do drugs, don't do this, and we owe it to our children. We owe it to, the members of our community to really educate them the same way how they were in our communities saying, don't pick up that reefer, don't do that, that
but
thing bad.
but how effective do you think Dare was? That's a whole nother conversation, right? Like how effective do
It
you think
wasn't,
actually
it
Dare was?
wasn't, I wouldn't even say it wasn't even effective because it was really a tactic that they used, for the war on drugs. But I say it in a sense
Sure,
of
sure,
they were educating us to not do it. Now we need to be educating, our students and, just our family members on just the different ways of, the medicinal properties of cannabis. You know what I mean? Because I think is yeah, we know that we can go get our medical marijuana card, but it's still a huge number of people who are just fearful, because either they were criminalized for it or they just still believe, the misbeliefs that was taught to them early on that cannabis is bad, reefer is bad, So I think we definitely it really just starts with education more than anything. But no, DARE was not effective at all. But it was effective. It was effective in their tactic of wanting us to be fearful and using it, and
sure,
that's why it's frowned upon, because they had the cops in our school saying, y'all better not do no reefer, don't do no weed, it's gonna make you go crazy. So we got to go back and correct that. Like we got to tell them no.
of
This
course,
is a medicinal. Even just teaching the students the agriculture side of cannabis, how to grow it. Like just understanding like the other benefits of cannabis and not just sitting around, just smoking all day. But no, DARE was
of
not
course.
effective at all. But it was effective in their intent and I mean with their mission. But it did us a disservice.
Of course, of course. I would agree wholeheartedly. And so the next thing I'll say is I remember initially meeting you at the Gary Chambers fundraiser that I was hosting in DC for
Hmm.
National Cannabis Festival.
Yeah.
But of course, since then I figured out you're a movie star, and so let's hear about your film, and where people can check it out, what it's all about.
Yeah, so my film is called A Women on the Outside. And really it just is about my life. It's about all the men in my family being incarcerated. My father was locked up since I was 3 years old. I'm the youngest, the only girl, and both of my older brothers were just in and out of prison. My one brother, he served a 12-year sentence. And in that process, I ended up adopting his son just because his parents were incarcerated. But A Woman on the Outside really just talks about, it just shows you just the burden that just the women picks up when these men are sent to prison. From us having to put up our house for as collateral for bail, or us having to pay lawyer fees or adopt children. It really just shows all the issues that we go through, and oftentimes we're left out of that narrative. It shows like my oldest brother, him being murdered, it just shows like just the mental effect that it has on a woman. And when we look up, it's like how much can a woman really bear. But it's a I'm honored, to have this documentary. We
Yeah.
filmed it over what, 6 years, and never
Wow.
would I ever envision it to be like us to be doing screenings. It was more so, it originally started from, us just recording people that rode my van service, the different women. I wanted to get their stories out there. But honestly, once we focus more on me, and I realized, like, oh shoot, like it's getting real for me. Like, you know what I mean? And sometimes, like, as we're doing the work for other people, we often forget that, we're still experiencing the same issues that we're helping other people, overcome. So once we like narrowed it down and focused the documentary on really just me, who is a social worker, entrepreneur, helping many other families, but me saving the life of my nephew, basically. You know what I mean? Because it shows the whole adoption process about, how both of his parents were incarcerated, and me being a social worker and adopting him and really getting him out of that system and breaking that cycle. So it's called A Woman on the Outside. It premiered at South by Southwest this past March. And we've just been screening,
Yes.
we've been screening at like different film festivals. And our last film festival, like, it looks good, like, and don't get me wrong, it's really good opportunities that I'm coming across. But our last screening that we just had, it was in Nashville, and it was at the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. And I was so excited. I prepared this whole speech. I knew I did my research, and I knew the audience that was going to be in the room. It was going to be judges, policymakers, and as we're briefing for it, like, the moderator was like, "I don't think you should mention anything about cannabis." And I'm like, "Huh?" He said, "No, I don't think it's a good idea for you to mention anything about cannabis." So that kind of even just rubbed me the wrong way, because it showed that people would rather see my struggle and the story, as opposed to us having conversations about really fixing the real problem. Here it is. I'm in room with, judges and decision makers and CEOs of recovery facilities throughout the world. And the CEO of this, conference was like, "No, I don't think it's a good idea for you to mention cannabis." And that's when I just realized, like, ooh, like, I'm still, being used as a pawn. Like, y'all want to screen my documentary, but y'all don't really want to,
Mm.
like, talk about the real solutions, of how we can really fix this whole war on drugs. So definitely, it looks good. I had some really, really good
Is
opportunities
it, and what is, as far as the state, is it a legal state, or what, you know, what was
in
the reasoning
Nashville.
behind the, yeah.
It was just because that their conference, is focused on, drug court professionals, and is drug. They're the ones that's responsible for sending the men and women to prison for cannabis. So I'm actually going against their mission if I go in here and I say, "Hey, y'all, cannabis is helping everybody." Like, and then when I looked up and I seen, even like the sponsors, it was sponsors from, like, what, the drug testing companies, things like that, people that are making money off of us,
Hmm.
off of this whole war on drugs. So
Sure.
that's when I had to kind of like really just take a step back and really realize, and start developing like an impact campaign for this whole, like, film, and not just be screening any and everywhere. You know what I mean? So we're definitely
Hmm.
coming up with an impact campaign, that's more structured and that's more, focused on the people who really been directly impacted by this war on drugs, and not just us just doing these screenings in front of people who really are not really trying to make a change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that, I wanted to ask you is, as a state, have, you guys have medical, you guys have decriminalized up to a certain threshold, right?
Yeah.
Um, One question would be, is decriminalized up to what threshold? Because I know, like, here, it's like 10 grams, 14 grams.
Um,
They were trying to expand it to like 2 ounces. But yeah,
I'm not really sure how many ounces it is. Yeah,
okay.
I'm not really sure. Like my whole motto is really just get your medical marijuana card. You won't even have to worry about like really
There's
like
yeah, 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 of
get your
course.
medical, and even like cause get your medical marijuana card so we don't have to worry about that. But even you gotta think,
Mm,
people who serve prison time and they're just coming home and here it is, they're getting drug tested for cannabis. Even I'm even telling them, get your medical marijuana card so now your PO won't be, sending you back for you consuming cannabis. So if you get your medical marijuana card, we don't really gotta like worry about that. But you know,
and
that's my motto.
and when is you guys haven't went legal yet or adult use, but
No.
I know you have a very pro cannabis Democratic nominee. If I, remember, that nominee was at National Cannabis Festival 2 years ago,
Hmm.
on one of the panels. So, if he in fact does win your state, I'm sure that would help bolster the
Yeah.
adult use in PA, right?
Yeah. Um, I know it's some talk. I know recently we provided like just testimonial, just to get it on the ballot past November, where just to get the general vote just here in Philly. So that was like
Okay.
a win for us just to get it on the ballot, just to get a general vote. But we are starting to push for cannabis legalization. We're working with a few people as far as like helping them create that language and what that look like. We're tapping into other legalized states, to just see, their different programs and how, they legalized it. So we are, talking about it, but of course we want to make sure that when it's done the right way.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, understood. And I'm sure you're going to be at the forefront of those conversations. And, what a great time to mention, I appreciate the invite to Black Cannabis Week in Philly this year. How many years have you guys been having this? And, are you excited for this year's?
I'm definitely excited. I love Black Cannabis Week. Honestly, Black Cannabis Week is actually one of the reasons as to how I entered the industry. I went after I shut my prison van service down, just going because I was consuming. And I'm like, okay, let me just go and just hearing some of those speakers, just speak just the motivation and just inspiration of getting into this industry and just telling us like just to start where we are within getting into this industry. It really just like motivated me like, okay, like I can see myself in this industry. So, and I know so many other people who attended this event who was like, oh, okay, I want to get in, so it's really one of those conferences where you'll come in not knowing, which way to go within the industry, but you'll definitely leave, just feeling empowered and, just having your brain spinning on, okay,
Okay.
like I can take what I'm currently doing and really get into this industry. I believe this is what the third year for Black
Oh,
Cannabis
okay.
Week.
Huh.
And it's just really a good, it's really a good event to just network now that I'm in the industry with just other people. So you got people that's like in upstate Pennsylvania that comes down. So it's good to just like really network with different, organizations that's throughout Pennsylvania in one centralized place. So this is the
Oh.
third year. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I don't go to Philadelphia often, but we'll make an appearance and look forward to having fun and meeting all the different playmakers down there and seeing what you guys are really close to New Jersey, so maybe
Mhm.
maybe maybe dip my toe over the line, see what New Jersey's going on while I'm down there
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you was what was the question? Oh, as far as Philadelphia, how many medical patients do you know, estimate how many you guys have?
Um, not off the rip, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah, not
okay.
off the rip. But I
Yeah,
do know
I just wonder
that
how it's going.
I do know that they're still locking black people up 6 times, more than whites for possession of marijuana. So I've really just been keeping track on those numbers, just seeing how, yeah, we're a medicinal state, but black people are still getting arrested at a higher rate than white people. So
And that's why I asked you about the decriminalization threshold, as well, because in Maryland, if it's over a certain amount, it's now possession with intent to distribute. So PWI now. Instead of your own personal consumption, and you're getting a citation for it.
yeah,
As it's a
I think
civil
it's a
thing. So
civil fine for like less than like 30 grams. Um,
okay,
but yeah, like my motto,
that's
like get your medical marijuana, or just get it. Just get your card.
yeah. Because we gotta remember, 30 grams is not a lot. That's a
It's
little bit
not.
over an ounce. So
It's not.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, I appreciate this very much, and one of the things that I wanted to I actually want to kind of, you know, pivot the conversation towards is we talk a lot about um, opportunities for Black people in the industry, but I feel like you're doing important work because a lot of times we don't talk about the reparative justice, of cannabis and what we should see, right? So, for me, I want to make sure that we have automatic expungements or vacation of stays, which essentially like it never happened. Um, and and the reason I say automatic because this person shouldn't have to go through another step to get this thing that should have forever been legalized adjudicated. And then so after of course the expungements, I think that there shouldn't be people that are rotting in prison. But brothers and sisters, we need to bring our brothers and sisters home who have possession charges, possession with intent to distribute, all these kingpin marijuana charges, all that they need to come home. Because the thought is like we see kingpins, we see pharmacists on the street all the time, and at the end of the day, they just get sued and then get back right there on the street, right?
Hmm.
So definitely that aspect. And then the thought is like making sure that there is real incubators and opportunities for success for people who have been impacted.
Yeah.
Someone like myself, someone being harassed for cannabis or something like that. Like so, someone who has been impacted, and of course, the last thing being that I want to make sure that in the industry that I see in Maryland come forth, I want to make sure that it looks representative of the diversity of the state, right? So it shouldn't be, 95% white owned or, anything like that. Like the thought is it should be representative of the state. And you want to make sure that, people that aren't rich have access and they
Hmm.
have business training and business skills. I kind of already harped on that, but, that was the thing. Expungements, letting people out, uh, providing real opportunity and coupling that with training and support thereafter, and then also just the destigmatization of it, right? So like socially putting in people's mind that like there's many different ways to consume. You don't have to inhale flower to
Hmm.
consume or enjoy the plant, and the thought is cannabis has been around since dinosaur time, right? Since the dinosaurs were here, the prehistoric age, and the thought is if we lean into it and do more research, it would only be better for mankind, civilization.
Right.
So that was my little tyrant. But the one thing that I wanted to say to you was I have a rapid round, right? So in the rapid round, we ask you a series of rapid questions.
Okay.
And the first question I have for you is what is your favorite strain?
African Thai. It's a sativa.
Okay, I'm not familiar. You got me on that. I'm not familiar with that one. I thought I was, I thought I was well cultured, but you got me.
African
I'm gonna have to
Tide,
check that
it
out, look
gets
that
me
up.
like in the groove. Like I can do a whole website, social month worth for social. Like it get my creative juices flowing. Every time,
Yeah,
and it's a strain. I haven't seen it in like any other states, but it is here in Pennsylvania. But it's African Tide. It's really good. It's just good. Like it just has you feeling like real upbeat. I just be in here dancing, like just
of
feeling
course.
so creative. But yeah, African Tide does it for me.
Favorite method of consumption and terp.
My favorite method of consumption is, of course, smoking with a joint paper. And my favorite terpene is limonene.
Oh, we could get along. I do like limonene
Like I love
for
tea.
sure. Yes, it just sets that day off. You know what I mean? Like absolutely. And
And
the last
African
question.
Thai is
Oh,
real
what's that?
big, and African Thai is real big with limonene, so that's right. I like it.
Oh, it's heavy in limonene in the top profile. Okay,
Hmm.
perfect. The last question I got for you: favorite superhero and why?
Huh, my favorite superhero. God is my favorite. He's a superhero around here.
God is your superhero. Okay, hey, absolutely,
Big homie
absolutely. Raise the
G.O.J.
roof on it.
Yeah,
Raise
big
the
homie
roof on it.
G.O.J. He the one.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you, and I hope to see you soon, and maybe our friend Gary will join us to get some dollars, but no matter what, I will be there, and I hope to bring some good company with me.
Thank
So
you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, taking the time to interview me, put me on your podcast. Love what you're doing. Yeah, and everything that you stand for. You really got my support.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and of course, I would interview you. You're the big superstar, right? Like I'm just a guy. I'm just a fly on the wall. But for people who don't know about you, please tell them a little. Please tell them how to stay connected with you.
You guys can stay connected with me. Follow my Instagram page. My social impact campaign is Free My Weed Man. And then my other brand, which is a cannabis ancillary business, is called Stay Lifted, lifted with a Y. So that's STAYLYFTED _. And that's how you guys can stay connected with me.
Yes, yes, y'all, and make sure to hit her up. Make sure to add her. Make sure to follow her. Make sure to go to Black Cannabis Weekend. And you saw the little phone drop there, but we still got it together, and I appreciate you again for joining us all the way from Philly. I
Thank
look to
you.
be up there soon.
Greetings and salutations, all my friends out there in internet land. I am William Honolulu Jr., and I have the privilege of being the host of the Black USA News Morning Show. The Black USA News Morning Show is currently recruiting guests for an upcoming series on single parents and co-parenting. We find that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of isolation in the narrative about single parents. And we want to make sure that we keep this platform available to tell the true story, our people's story. The topics that we will be covering range from health, wellness, the type of support, how important your social support system is, romance, and things of that nature. If you're interested in becoming a guest, you can check the link in the description. You can email us at info@grindinggang.com, or you can visit this link. Thank you so much and have an awesome day.
Thanks for joining us. We got another Prince Georgian, the Prince George's natives. You hear me all the time say gorgeous Prince George's County. Yes, from Prince George's County, we are proud. So I have Kevin here to join us. Hey, how you doing, Kevin?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. And
Good.
so for people who don't know Kevin, he does a lot in the cannabis industry, but also, a lot of the conversations I have around with Kevin are, how minorities are going to be able to thrive and really participate in the market that currently is available and the upcoming market. So Kevin, just give people a little backstory of, who you are and, why you do what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name is Kevin Ford. I started a company called Uplift Maryland in 2018, which was really started because I wanted people. I became a patient recently. I really wanted people to be able to smoke like me, and I knew that a lot of people in our community weren't aware of the industry and what it looked like, or even how to be a part of it. Typically, when you hear medical cannabis, you think that you have to be terminally ill in order to take part in the industry. So I just kind of wanted to break down that stigma by educating our community for the opportunities of the future, which in my opinion is cannabis. So when we started Uplift Maryland, we started doing patient certifications first, and then we had an opportunity to apply for and win a grant through the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission to develop and implement a business development and training program uh, focused on minorities and women who were trying to apply for grower and processor licenses here from Maryland in 2019. Once we finished that program up, it was pretty successful. We had one instructor who went on to actually win one of the growers licenses, and then one of the students is on the cusp of um, actually receiving a processor license. But as you know, even though they did award additional licenses, a majority of folks were still left out. So that leaves us here at legalization, where now we're fighting to ensure that our ballot initiative here in Maryland passes so that we can legalize for adult use.
Okay, okay, and you know that is a lot for people to zero in on, and so Kevin, I'm sure you're excited about the ballot referendum, but you know, as I tell people, you know, to be aware that the ballot referendum is coming, you know, but also, you know, figure out what you want in the framework, you know. So when you're thinking about the framework of the recreational market that exists, you know, what are some things that you want to see happen?
Um, I think one way that I would say that I differ from most other advocates who push for diversity, equity, and inclusion is um,
Sure.
really going towards a route of equality rather than equity. And I think a lot of times, folks who aren't Black, who might be our legislators, hear that and think that, oh, Black people just want a handout. And that's not what we want. We honestly just want an opportunity to fail, an opportunity to be able to take part in an industry in a market that is, you know, a plant being monetized, which again, people who look like you and I have been criminalized for decades, So I
Sure.
think it's only right that, not only do, we want an opportunity to participate in this, just like you want an opportunity to participate in this. And I think when they hear that equity word, it thinks that we're taking away something from them and giving it to us, when that's not really what it is. I think we just want everybody to have an opportunity to um, dive in, but hopefully also sustain within the market as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I had conversations on this. I think that you bring in an interesting perspective, especially, you know, the opportunity to fail, right? I did really like that, you know, that talking point, the opportunity to fail, because a lot of times, you know, what I've seen even in the medical market, you know, there might be a lot of people of color who apply for the licenses, but it wasn't a lot of people who get approvals,
Exactly.
right? So, and one of the things you mentioned, and I'm also, you know, very much for, is some type of incubator, right? So like helping these small businesses succeed after they open.
Exactly.
You know,
I mean, we've seen in other states where, a state has already had their medical program up and going, and then sometimes these big companies get these licenses because they're essentially going to the highest bidder, and
sure,
and granted, there's some equity advocates who say, hey, these big companies shouldn't be able to just switch right into the adult use market just because they have a medical license. But I mean, there's really levels to this, and we had this conversation the other day about looking at this not only just from a state perspective but a federal perspective as we move along, and especially right here in Prince
absolutely.
George's County, where we have some of the highest property taxes in our state. And that's because we don't have enough commercial tax base to help us bring that tax burden down on our citizens. So I think we, as not only a state but as a county, have to be ready to position ourselves to be a leader in housing these businesses that can assist not only just the consumer or the business owner, but the actual community as well.
And that's a bunch of ideas, many of them profound. As I've seen in the medical market, I've seen a concentration of, you know, dispensaries and, you know, cannabis ancillary businesses in Baltimore County and Baltimore City. So I mean, it's very great that you mentioned, you know, Prince George's needs to be ahead of this, and on top of this moving forward for recreational. because one of the things that I've seen is even when we talk about dispensaries, right? That concentration that you have in Baltimore City and County. If we talk about cultivation, there's I guess a greater cluster in Eastern and Western Maryland. Not as much in Central, and especially Prince George's and Southern Prince George's. So I
Right.
think that that's very important. So the question I have, and you may or may not be able to answer this, but like, how do we as a county prepare to be a leader on something like this?
Well, I think number one, we just had our zoning rewrite through the county council. I think that they weren't necessarily thinking about this at that time. So I think there's probably going to have to be some additional work done on that to make sure that we're creating cannabis friendly zones, and particularly for the actual growers and processors who are the ones
Sure.
wholesaling these products, so that we're getting those tax dollars off of that. And again, once federal legalization comes, then it gives us the opportunity to house businesses that are exporting cannabis to other states, which then helps our tax base as well. So I think that's where we start, is really with the zoning code and ensuring that um, even all the stakeholders that are in elected office as well understand the importance of us housing these businesses here.
Sure. I mean, so that's a conversation that I got to make sure to have with the county council representatives. So absolutely. Okay. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you was, I ask every person when it comes to Maryland cannabis and the future of Maryland cannabis. From the medical program, we've seen a lot of controversy. We've seen a lot of problems with the rollout.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they're going to do right by Black and brown people with this adult use program?
Well, I think, and again, I think kind of focusing in on Prince George's County at the end of this, but I guess from the start of it, that's
Of
why
course, of course.
legislative session is so important. I think next year coming, because they're going to have the opportunity to actually shape what the industry looks like, or at least they're going to try to shape what the industry looks like. And depending on what it looks like, we need to try to push them one way or another, whether
Sure.
that's, ensuring they put the proper language in, or just saying, hey, you guys need to step back off of this, look at it from a standpoint of possession and criminalization and stopping that, whereas the actual industry is formed by the actual commission. And I think that's been a lot of the issue we've seen with the medical market, and the reason why it's hard to change things is because everything is codified in law. But when you have different things that lie within the commission versus lying within the actual law, it makes it a little easier to be fluid and to fix things the way you need them to be fixed at that time.
Yeah.
So if it was up to me, I would be trying to push people to give a lot of the power towards the actual commission, and then also taking a lot of the burden off of the state by having unlimited licenses amounts for all categories, so that really who you're working with then, and we've seen this in somewhere like Massachusetts or even New Jersey right now, that when they let folks get licenses at the state level, they then have to deal with local control as well. And that's why I think we're in a prime position as Prince George's County, being one of the wealthiest Black counties in America, to be able to be a leader on this, to make sure that you know we set our environment up here in Prince George's County for our people to succeed.
Mm. That those I want all of those things to happen. And at the end of the day, I like that you centered it back to Prince George's County, because when I go meet these growers and these cultivators in the East and the West, and I'm like, man, there's only one cultivator in Prince George's. It's a good one, but dang, you know what I mean? Like, and for the most part, what they tell me, it
Also,
makes sense. Would you say?
I was going to say, I feel like that's a lot of our fault too. I don't think that we were
Sure,
very
sure.
open to having it, because it was still like uncharted territory for a lot of the elected officials, right? Um, So I think we
Well,
eased in. And also, there was geographic diversity in that round as well. But then again, the zoning for Prince George's County has made it harder for those growers and
absolutely,
processors to come in and house here. So I think there's
absolutely.
there's a few things that can be done all the way around.
Well, speaking from of course, the geographic diversity is something that they stated, but a lot of times they mention just the lower property taxes, which we know are a thing, right? We pay some of the highest property taxes, I think the second highest in the state as a county. And what was the other thing? They said it was the property taxes, oh, and how much they could pay the employees. Like so, like in those areas, you know, the median income was lower, so they
Right,
could, and the cost of living is lower, so they
right,
can, pay their employees a lower amount to
right.
operate essentially.
But I mean, and that also, those jobs are good jobs for those areas, though. And I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we should be able to bring, you know, good jobs to our area as well. But I think it's going to take some political and government assistance and
sure,
cooperation for um, folks to come in here. Because again, like I said, the interstate commerce, once we see that, once it becomes descheduled federally, you'll be able to go across state lines with it. And I think that's where you'll see a lot of jump, especially when you talk about property taxes and things like that.
sure, sure. So I mean, I know you're gonna be a friend, and I'm gonna definitely hit you up. Like, how do we move Prince George's County forward? You know what I mean? Especially for cannabis, right? Because it's coming.
Absolutely. It's coming. No doubt about
And
that.
so I know that I know that you're a busy person. Just want to ask you a few rapid questions, or I call them rapid fire, right?
Yep.
So the first question I have for you is what is your favorite strand?
Hmm. It's hard to really say. I mean, I'm
Okay,
really thinking
okay.
like back in the day, like when I
It
first
gotta be
like
one of the
fell
old school. Gotta be
in
one of the
love.
old school ones, right?
I think it was. I mean, I would say like Purple Kush was definitely one of my favorites. Um,
Ah, see, I love
I
the
did.
Afghan Kush. You remember the Afghan Kush?
I do. I mean, they had what's a HMS or what they now Country. They have
Yeah,
Af-
country.
Afghan Kush. Don't they? Um, yeah, Afghan
Yeah,
is
I
definitely good,
believe they do.
but I'm
Okay,
more
so
so like a indica guy.
you said indica.
Yeah, for sure.
Wait, but that was the next thing I was getting to. Favorite terpene.
Uh, Definitely Mercian, but I do like linalool as well.
Ah,
But I,
okay.
I can't take limonene in high doses
Ah,
because
and why is that? Because lemon. I like lemonade. Why lemonade is one of my favorites. I probably would have said that first.
it actually brings on. So I have classic migraines, and like every time I get a migraine, I always get like a visual aura at the beginning of it, which kind of like blocks out some of my vision. And high levels of limonene, like a Mai Tai from G Leaf, for example, I can't smoke that at all because that will
Ah,
give me a headache. And
it's
especially high level.
because high THC. It's high THC, no terps. It's just that head
Well,
buster.
no, I'm saying it'll
Oh,
have
and the
like
limonene and limonene
yeah,
personally.
it'll have over 1% limonene, and then it will have
Ah,
the Mai Tai though. It's like the high THC mixed with the high limonene is definitely not a good
not
mix
your
for me. Yeah,
not your go-to. I
it's
mean,
not
but
it.
you're an experienced and a responsible consumer. So now you found out what works for you, what doesn't work for you.
That's the
So
best part about being a patient is just being a educated consumer and kind of having an understanding of how to dial
sure,
in on what products actually work for you based on that entourage effect.
of course, of course. And the last rapid fire question I got for you is favorite superhero and why?
Mm.
You gotta have an interesting from me.
I mean, I mean, I guess this could be interesting, but definitely going with. I'm very like pro-black, so
Okay.
like
Okay.
definitely going with, and I wish I had more time to think about this, but I want to just say Black Panther. Really appreciate the level of power and intensity that you know that character brought to the screen, and I mean, really just Chad himself.
Sure.
But um, that's definitely it. It was definitely very black, and I'm all about that.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to the new one. I saw the trailer. I hope you did. I'm sure everybody else did.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
Yes.
to it. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Well, Kevin, I won't hold you any longer. Tell the people how they can stay connected with you. Of course, it's going to be a busy election season.
It is. So, and speaking of election season, just to close out, we're definitely going to be running a campaign to legalize cannabis here in Maryland to support the ballot initiative. So, if you're interested in helping out with that, go to upliftmaryland.co and you can fill out the form there. We'll get in contact with you when it's time. But if you want to follow me as an individual, I'm pretty much at K Ford Jr. on everything. But then I also ask you to follow at Uplift National on Instagram as well.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Kevin Ford Jr. of Uplift National. Keep doing great things. Keep thriving, brother. Keep thriving.
You keep doing your thing. We're gonna run this up together. That's collaboration over competition.
Collaboration over, and I'm glad you ended on that. I'm gonna make sure to include you when we do the cannabis conference coming up this fall. So I'll make sure to
Perfect.
include you. I'm sure William, if he didn't already mention it to you before, you'll be talking to him later on.
That sounds good.
Okay, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks again.
Appreciate y'all. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Okay, that was Kevin Ford of Uplift National. We will have another guest. Talk to you soon, guys.